You grew up hearing stories about the days before the exile, about the siege when food was so scarce, people did the unthinkable in order to eat. You heard about the waves of people taken captive from what they called the Promised Land and forcibly brought into Babylon. They were your ancestors, your great-greats, who made a home in the land of Persia, who built dwellings, pursued careers, raised children, and prayed for the peace of the land as the prophet Jeremiah had instructed. Oddly enough, your family was happy here. In fact, about 50 years ago, when your family heard the Jews were returning to Judah, they decided to stay in the capital city of Susa. Life wasn't perfect, but it was predictable. It was good enough to stay put. Now, your life hasn't always been an easy one. Both your parents are dead. Thank goodness for your cousin Mordecai, who took you in. He's good, and he's kind. He's raised you as his own, as a proper Jewish young lady. And while you've assimilated into the culture in many ways, cousin Mordecai has never let you forget that you're one of God's chosen. You've listened to him quote the Torah. You've heard the words of the prophets Ezekiel and Jeremiah. You're set apart, different than the culture around you. You worship a different God. The Persians worship many, but you worship one. In fact, the earliest prayer you learned as a child burned this into your memory. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Although your parents' death certainly affected your childhood, your life since then has been a good one. And now as a young woman, you have dreams for your future. Is cousin Mordecai even now searching for a husband for you? Has a deal been brokered you know nothing about? If so, when will you find out? Will you like the young man? Will he even be young? Or will he be old like your friend's husband? What must it be like to choose a husband for yourself? Oh well, no use dreaming. Best to get back to the housework and have supper ready before cousin Mordecai returns from the citadel. But tonight's different. Mordecai comes in shaken. Queen Vashti has been deposed, taken off her throne. King Ahasuerus has dethroned her simply because she wouldn't perform for a banquet room full of drunken revelers. What kind of a man must this king be? You don't envy the next queen. A few days later, Mordecai rushes into the house. He's home early and he looks upset. Hadassah, he says, using your Hebrew name. Oh, Hadassah, they're coming. And the story tumbles out. The king's looking for a new wife, and he's conscripting young virgins for his harem. If the king's men show up at your door, you have no choice. You have to go. Mordecai's sure you'll be chosen. People say you're beautiful. Mordecai knows you are. And he knows that the king's servants won't pass up an attractive young woman in order to gain favor with the king. That night you can't sleep. Fear tightens your chest and settles in your stomach. What about your dreams? A home, a family, maybe, just maybe, someone who loves you. But it's no use to dream now. A young woman in Persia has very few rights, especially one of Jewish descent. And when the king makes a decree, no one can stop him. And then men are at your door, and you have to go with them. Tears fill your eyes. Your life will never be the same. You walk out of the house with Mordecai's words ringing in your ears. You must not tell them you're descended from the exiles. Do not mention your ancestry or your people. Please, Hadassah, stay safe. Never tell them you're a Jew. The men escort you to one of the king's harems, the one for the virgins, the other one's for the concubines. You wonder if you'll ever end up there. You've heard stories. Your brain is trying to grasp everything as you enter the harem, and then suddenly, a kind face. You're introduced to Haggai, the king's eunuch, who's in charge of the harem. You and the other new girls are given instructions. You will undergo a year-long regimen of beauty treatments, 6 months with oil of myrrh, and 6 months with spices and ointments. And so it begins, the months in the harem. You do your best to cooperate. You undergo every treatment they advise, even the weird ones. You find yourself learning, growing, adapting. And then something amazing happens. Haggai, the man in charge, genuinely begins to like you and take special care of you. He personally makes use of, he personally makes sure you have your portion of food and the appropriate treatments. He assigns you 7 young women from the king's palace, and you're given the best spot in the harem. And every day when you look out your window, you see cousin Mordecai walking in the court of the harem to see if he can find out how you're doing. What a gift to be so cared for. You almost wish that this time would last, but when you lie awake at night, you know it can't. Your time's coming and you dread the thought. And then the year's up, and it's time for you to spend the night with the king. You know what this means. You go in at night, and in the morning you'll be sent to the second harem where the concubines live under the care of a different eunuch, where you'll live out the rest of your life. You may never see the king again unless he likes you and calls you back for another night. You'll never marry. You'll simply exist, constantly at the king's beck and call, depending on his desire of the moment. When the day comes, you place your full trust in Haggai. He has never steered you wrong. So you take only what he advises and do only what he says, and you spend the night with the king. And you had no way of knowing this would happen, but the king is immediately drawn to you. He loves you more than anyone else in all of his harems. Of all the women he could choose, he chooses you. And he crowns you his queen, Queen Esther of Persia. It's a head-spinning turn of events. The days pass and you begin to grow into your role as queen. Interestingly, the duties of the queen have very little to do with the king. You do your thing and he does his. Occasionally he calls for you, but never can you call for him. In fact, as everyone knows, anyone who comes before him without being summoned is at risk of death. The only thing that will save them is the extended scepter. So you live your days in the palace with the ones who serve you. Once again, it's a pretty good life. You miss your family, but occasionally you receive news of them through your servants. Then one day you hear something strange and terrible. Your young women tell you that Mordecai is at the king's gate. He's torn his clothes. He's wearing sackcloth and ashes. He's mourning loudly, wailing, in fact. There are reports of others doing the same thing around the city. What can this mean? Why is Mordecai doing this thing? Why is he drawing attention to himself in this way? Surely his actions could raise questions about you as well. You sing close to him to keep him from being such a spectacle, but he won't wear them. He continues to mourn. Something must be done. You send for Hatak, one of the king's eunuchs, one you know you can trust. Hurry, you tell him. Find out what's going on with Mordecai and why is he acting this way? When Hatak returns, he has a message from Mordecai along with a copy of a written decree that states that on a certain day, all Jews can be massacred without penalty. You hear the story of the palace official Haman and his plot to kill the Jews, and then you hear words that freeze your blood. Mordecai wants you to go to the king and beg for the lives of the Jews. What can your cousin be thinking? He's the one who told you never to mention your heritage. Doesn't he understand that you just can't walk into the throne room? It's been a month since the king called for you. Doesn't Mordecai know that this is the king who deposed the first queen just for failing to show up when he called? This king is used to getting what he wants, and another queen who doesn't know how to obey protocol is certainly not going to thrill him. Doesn't Mordecai know that even though you have the title of queen, you have no real power? Doesn't he know that your life could be at risk here? Surely he must not understand. So you send Hatak back with a message. All the king's servants and the people of the king's provinces know that if any man or woman goes to the king inside the inner court without being called, there is but one law: to be put to death, except the one to whom the king holds out the golden scepter, so he may live. But as for me, I have not been called to come into the king these 30 days. Surely this message will convince him, right? But Mordecai doesn't give up easily. Hatak returns with another message, this time in Mordecai's own words. It's almost as if you can hear his voice. Do not think to yourself that in the king's palace you will escape more than any or all of the other Jews. For if you keep silent at this time, relief and deliverance will rise for the Jews from another place. But you and your father's house will perish. And who knows whether you have not come to the kingdom for such a time as this. Your face grows hot as shame overtakes you. All at once you clearly see your selfishness. You've been worried about your own safety, your own powerlessness, when thousands of lives are at stake. Your family's lives are at stake. But still, this is much too big for you. You can't do it alone. Quickly, you tell Hatak to have Mordecai proclaim a 3-day fast among the Jews in the city. You and your young women will fast as well. And on the 3rd day, you will go to the king, even though it's against the law. And if you die, you die. And there's a very good chance that will be the outcome. But at least you will have done the right thing. At least you will have tried. 3 days pass, and it's probably a good thing you're fasting because you couldn't eat anyway. Will this be your last day on earth? And how will it end? With growing dread, you dress in your finest royal robes and make your way to the inner court. You notice the curious glances of servants and officials as you walk in. The king is sitting on his throne. You stand quietly waiting for him to notice you, almost praying that he doesn't. And then he sees you. You watch the look of surprise cross his face. He knows the law as well as you do, better, in fact. This just doesn't happen. People don't just show up in the throne room. But then he smiles, and you watch as he extends the golden scepter. With your heart pounding loudly in your ears, you walk forward and touch the tip of the scepter. You hear him say, "What is it, Queen Esther? What's your request? It shall be given to you, even to the half of my kingdom." You've thought this through. You have a plan. You won't drop your request on him too quickly. You hear yourself answer, "If it please the king, let the king and Haman come today to a feast that I've prepared for the king." The king is delighted. Quickly he locates Haman, and they join you at the feast your servants have prepared. And once more at the end of the meal, the king asks for your request. But once again, you delay. "One more feast," you say. "Come tomorrow, and I'll tell you everything." You're still nervous. How will the king react when he finds out you're a Jew? Will he be willing to help? Or will he simply stay with the original decree? Or will you also be dethroned, or worse? But in all of this, you're learning something important. Something's changing inside you. You find out when you do the hard thing, even in the face of your fear, it gets easier to be brave. The next day, while your staff is preparing the second banquet, you hear some crazy news. Mordecai has been seen dressed in the king's robe, riding on the king's horse through the city square. And irony of all ironies, it's Haman who's going before him shouting, "Thus shall it be done to the man whom the king delights to honor." What in the world has happened? What delicious justice. You may be the queen, but you can hardly contain yourself. You laugh until you have tears, and you feel braver somehow. And then the king and Haman come back for a second feast. You're ready now. You know that your life has been leading up to this. And this time when the king asks you to name your request, the words burn inside you. You speak with passion. You speak for your people. You've been brought to the kingdom for this moment. "If I have found favor in your sight, O king, And if it please the king, let my life be granted me for my wish, and my people for my request. For we've been sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, to be killed, and to be annihilated." You watch the king's expression turn from confusion to shock to anger. "Who is he?" he roars. "And where is he who has dared to do this?" Your eyes turn to Haman, who's now pale and sweating. You see the fear in his eyes. And you raise your finger in his direction. A foe and enemy, this wicked Haman. Things happen quickly after that. In a moment of poetic justice, Haman is hung on the gallows he prepared for your cousin Mordecai. The king gives you Haman's entire house and inheritance. Mordecai is promoted to the king's staff. Your future is secure, and cousin Mordecai is at your side. But the job isn't done. You may be safe, but the day of the Jews' destruction is coming closer and closer, and the king has yet to address the issue. Yes, Haman is dead, but innocent people will die if this decree is not stopped. No longer are you simply worried about your own safety. You've learned what happens when you speak up in the face of injustice and your heart beats for your people. You have a purpose to fulfill. So you go back to the king without his summons. This time you don't think about the threat to your life if he doesn't extend the scepter. Innocent lives are more important. You fall at his feet weeping. You plead with him to change the legislation, to do something to undo the injustice. And once again, the golden scepter is extended. And this time, you don't ask for yourself. In your last encounter, your first words were for your own life. But this time, your plea is different. How, you say? How can I bear to see the calamity that's coming to my people? Or how can I bear to see the destruction of my kindred? Something has happened inside you. Doing right, even when you're afraid, has that effect on people. Living for something bigger than yourself has begun to consume you. And when the king hands you his ring and tells you to write the order, you're ready. We all know how the story of Esther ends. The Jewish nation in Persia is saved from annihilation, and many of their enemies are put to death. A national holiday is proclaimed in remembrance, a holiday that's celebrated to this very day. But what does Esther's story have to do with you as you sit here in the chapel at God's Bible School and College and Missionary Training Home? Friend, you too have been made for a cause bigger than yourself. While you may never save an entire nation, we have an enemy much worse and much more powerful than Haman, who has come to steal, kill, and destroy. As a follower of Christ, you have been brought into the kingdom for this moment. It's not an accident that you were born now. It's not an accident that you sit here in 2024. Is Jesus asking you to do something out of your comfort zone? Has he been asking you to talk to that friend at work and present the gospel? What about the conversation you're supposed to have with that person in your friend group, the one who's making choices that scare you? What about that other thing God's been asking, but you're afraid? It's too much, you say. Yeah, it probably is, but you won't do it alone. And if you walk forward into your fear to do the right thing, you will also learn what Esther learned. It gets easier to be brave. And you'll learn firsthand that you go in the strength of the Lord and that the outcome is up to him. Your focus will shift outward to those around you, and you'll learn to truly love others and live that way. And the kingdom will grow, and lives will be saved, not just from death, as in Esther's day, but from eternal destruction because of your witness. There's a cause for you, my friends. Walk forward with Jesus into your fear. You, every single one of you, have come to the kingdom for such a time as this. Would you stand with me? Father, there are no accidents with you. There is no individual here who was born at the wrong time and in the wrong place or to the wrong set of circumstances. Every single one of them bears your mark, and every single one of them has been given this great task, this amazing task of winning people for the kingdom, of saving people from certain death and destruction. And it's scary to get out of our comfort zones. It's scary to do things that risk our reputation and our name. It's scary to do things that we're not used to doing. But Father, if we go forth in your name, we go forth in your Spirit, and we will do things we had no idea we could do because you are with us. I pray for every single one of us here today, not just the students, all of us. Give us a vision of why we're here today. Don't let us waste these precious moments. Help us, Lord, to take advantage of the gift of today that you've given us. We ask all of this in Jesus' name. Amen. Go in peace, my friends.
We're glad you joined us. God's Bible School and College prepares students for lives of ministry wherever God calls them. This content is possible because of the generous support of friends like you. To support GBSC, visit giving.gbs.edu. Thank you.